Okay, let's dive into this. Picture this, it's 1998. A former Chinese basketball player turned businessman, a guy named Xu Jinping, is standing in the freezing cold in Ukraine. He's bundled up in this bright yellow ski jacket, staring at a massive, rusted, half-finished Soviet aircraft carrier called the Varyag. Over 4 intense days, and what honestly sounds like a movie plot, he uses over 50 bottles of high-proof liquor to get the Ukrainian sellers so thoroughly drunk that they agree to sell him the entire ship, plus its super valuable blueprints, for just $20 million. And his excuse for buying a literal warship? He claims he's going to tow it back and build a floating luxury casino in Macau. But here's the crazy part. It was all an elaborate, completely state-backed fake-out. Now, you might be wondering, why on earth would a rising global power go to such extreme lengths just to hide its military ambitions? I mean, Beijing orchestrated this massive deception. We're talking fake shell companies, multi-million-dollar villas in Hong Kong, literally a totally bogus casino permit, just to get their hands on a single piece of hardware. But this incredibly elaborate $20 million cover story actually reveals a whole lot about their defensive mindset back then. They were absolutely terrified of alarming their neighbors, or worse, provoking a harsh containment reaction from the United States. So welcome to this explainer. Today, we are going to decode the exact historical moment that ultra-cautious mindset just vanished. We're going to trace the fascinating journey of how and exactly when China stopped hiding its strength, completely ditched the elaborate cover stories, and started actively building a brand new global order.
Section 1. The Strategy of Hiding.
To really grasp this massive shift, we first need to establish our historical baseline. For decades, the core philosophy guiding Beijing was coined by leader Deng Xiaoping. The doctrine was Tao Guang Yang Hui, which translates to hiding capabilities and biding time. You see, at this point in history, China perceived itself as quite weak, especially compared to the US. So, the official strategy? Strictly defensive. The entire goal was to maintain a super low profile, avoid taking the lead internationally, and basically blunt American power without ever directly challenging it. It was all about laying low, avoiding any sort of containment, and quietly building up their own economy at home.
Section 2. The 2008 Turning Point.
Well, this cautious, quiet status quo was eventually shattered, and the catalyst wasn't actually a war. It was an economic crash. The 2008 global financial crisis hit the world incredibly hard, but in Beijing's eyes, it asymmetrically weakened the United States. The crisis suddenly exposed these deep structural weaknesses in American financial capitalism, which, up until that exact moment, had seemed virtually invincible. So the crucial takeaway here is that Chinese think tanks and policymakers looked at all this fallout and quickly concluded that the global power gap between Washington and Beijing had just narrowed, and it had narrowed rapidly.
And they didn't keep this revelation to themselves. This shift in perception was quickly formalized. In a really pivotal 2009 speech to diplomats, President Hu Jintao stated, "There has been a major change in the balance of international forces." Now, we need to decode the jargon here, right? Because in Chinese Communist Party terminology, phrases like balance of international forces or multipolarity, they aren't just dry academic concepts. They are literally euphemisms for the relative decline of U.S. power. Hu was signaling to his entire foreign policy apparatus that a massive strategic pivot was officially underway.
Section 3. A New Strategic Doctrine.
So this newfound confidence didn't just change the rhetoric. It translated into a brand new grand strategy for the nation. During that very same 2009 conference, Hu Jintao modified Deng's old doctrine. He declared that China must now move toward actively accomplishing something. I know, it sounds like a pretty mild semantic update, but adding that single word, actively, was a geopolitical earthquake. It officially ended the era of merely hiding capabilities and blunting U.S. power. From this moment on, the clear directive was to proactively step out of the shadows and actively build regional order, entirely on China's terms.
Section 4. The Peripheral Priority. Let's explore how this new doctrine radically altered China's diplomatic behavior on the world stage. We start to see a major reshuffling of priorities, and this is perfectly symbolized by the promotion of Asia expert Wang Yi to foreign minister. For the longest time, the U.S. was the absolute center of their diplomatic universe. Managing Washington was considered the key. But under this new era, which was eventually formalized by Xi Jinping, the focus totally flipped. The immediate neighborhood, their periphery, became the ultimate priority. The grand strategy was no longer primarily about dealing with a distant America. It was about securing dominance and profound influence right in their own backyard in Asia.
And the blueprint for this regional dominance is a concept called the Community of Common Destiny. It's essentially a comprehensive framework designed to physically and economically bind Asian neighbors to Beijing through massive infrastructure and trade deals. At the same time, it's designed to push out what China calls the Cold War mentality, which, by the way, is essentially their code word for United States alliances. The core message they were sending to the region became very clear. Your economic future is tied directly to us.
Section 5. Building a Maritime Power.
Moving into our final section, we have to look at how China physically armed itself to actually achieve this new doctrine. The mood shift was just palpable. It's perhaps best captured by diplomat Yang Jieqi's infamous 2010 quote to his Southeast Asian counterparts, where he just flat out said, "China is a big country, and that's just a fact." And this brilliantly illustrates the hardware reality of that attitude shift. For decades, China's military prioritized blunting weapons, submarines, sea mines, anti-ship missiles. These are defensive, asymmetric tools simply to deny the U.S. access to their waters. But here's the thing. You can't build regional hegemony or project power with sea mines. This new building strategy required offensive platforms. We're talking aircraft carriers, massive amphibious vessels, and a robust Marine Corps designed for sea control and overseas intervention.
Which brings us to this absolutely staggering number, 100,000. To put that into perspective, for decades, China kept its Marine Corps intentionally small, capped at around just 10,000 troops. But following this post-2008 strategic shift, they announced an expansion targeting 100,000 Marines. It's a tenfold increase that perfectly demonstrates the aggressive pivot toward amphibious warfare, capturing islands, and projecting real power far, far beyond their immediate shores.
And of course, to transport those Marines and protect those new carrier groups, the naval shipyards just kicked into absolute overdrive right after 2008. They began churning out these massive Type 071 and 075 amphibious assault ships, whole fleets of advanced Luoyang 3 destroyers equipped with super sophisticated anti-air and anti-submarine capabilities, and modern mine countermeasure vessels. What's really fascinating here is that China actually had the wealth and the industrial capacity to build these specific technologies years earlier, but they deliberately neglected them, biding their time until the 2008 strategic shift made them an absolute necessity.
So let's bring this whole crazy narrative full circle, right back to that rusted Soviet hull bought with 50 bottles of liquor. After the incredible James Bond-style effort to buy the Variag in 1998, it finally arrived in China, and then it literally just sat there. Until 2005, it was only minimally preserved. It was purposefully left idle so as not to alarm the neighbors. But right on cue, in 2009, following the financial crisis and that massive strategic shift we just talked about, major refurbishing finally began. Its journey perfectly, almost poetically, maps onto China's overall transition from hiding its capabilities to openly constructing a dominant blue water navy.
We've seen the exact moment the calculus changed, and the massive wave of diplomacy and military hardware that immediately followed. So, the ultimate question we are left with is this. With the decades-long era of hiding and biding definitively over, how will the rest of the world adapt to a global power that is no longer content to wait in the shadows, but is out there, actively building a new reality? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what's on the horizon.